Welcome to SuperTalk, a podcast hosted by Hillside Public Schools Superintendent Glover. The goal of SuperTalk is to provide an informative platform where Hillside Public School students, staff, and stakeholders can have a candid conversation with the district superintendent, as well as be spotlighted for their hard work and initiatives. Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of SuperTalk with Superintendent Glover, coming to you from Hillside Public Schools. And my pleasure today is to introduce a good brother who's doing a lot of work in the educational ecosystems in the space of language arts literacy. Mr. Dwaine Millard, who works for Scholastic, I've been working with Dwaine for a couple decades,
time.
Right?
Yes, I was about to say a few decades.
And so folks are probably saying, okay, Superintendent Glover, you go from having young people on your podcast and now you're bringing back the adults. But I'm bringing back the adults because Mr. Dwaine Millard brings forth a perspective that is needed at this point in time in our communities, where we're talking about literacy and growing literacy and language acquisition in our young people. Hillside Public Schools has embarked on a partnership with Scholastic. And it's a partnership that so far has been very fruitful and helpful. And we'll get into that and we'll talk about that. But today I wanted to bring forth who I like to say is a co-architect in the work that we're doing in Hillside to make sure that the footprint of literacy is forever stamped in the grounds here in the township of Hillside in the minds of our young people. So without further ado, I bring to you none other than Mr. Dwaine Millard of Scholastic. Dwaine, go ahead and give yourself a shout out and just introduce yourself. I know I did your name, but bring love and bring words.
Superintendent Glover, first and foremost, appreciate you and appreciate the Hillside community allowing me to spend some time talking with you on Super Talk. This is amazing. I love having opportunities to talk with people I have so much respect for in the work you do and what you represent. My name is Dwaine Millard. I am the Senior Vice President for Partnerships and Sales at Scholastic Education Solutions. We are the division that focuses on how do we support school districts in all the work that is needed in the classroom, outside of the classroom with the community and the family, so we can make sure we have 360 degrees or a whole child, a focus of whole child when we're partnering with districts like yourself.
My brother gave us a mouthful just now. So thank you. We salute you. I'm going to give that round of applause. You know, we like to always give accolades and shout outs. A lot of folks don't understand that to do this work, you have to have multiple partners inside the school system and on the external part. And so when you see the books that are coming for, like everybody knows Scholastic and books, but there's so many other layers to this work. So before we jump into what it means to be senior vice president, let's talk about your journey into education, because this wasn't always you didn't go to college to come out and say, I'm going to be senior vice president of Scholastic. So talk about your journey and what this means and how you got to this space.
Oh, thank you for that question. So I must first say that I am a graduate of the Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland.
That's the Bears, if I'm not mistaken. Morgan State Bears, right?
It is the Morgan State Bears.
Shout out to Morgan State.
Shout out to Morgan State. All of the universities, all the HBCUs, but I just have to give a shout out to the Morgan State University. And although I'm an Eagles fan, I do respect the Ravens. I wish they won last week, but it kind of, you roll with the punches and you take what you get. So I started off high level, move forward fast as a business major. And then I was hooked on this passion for education and ended up becoming a business minor and an education major because I wanted to give back to communities. I started off as an education major at Morgan State University, and then I went straight into teaching. I taught middle school for 5 years, and I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit of wanting to figure out how I could help scale. And so I ended up moving to New York City, New Jersey area, and I moved into EdTech. So I used to be in educational technology, and I'm still in EdTech, but I'm more so in a different space where we're focusing on purely literacy, family, and community engagement. If I can mention, just speeding up a little bit, before coming to this position, when you said journey, and I just want to connect with the education part of the journey. So the greatest thing was being able to do this kind of work, but still focused on helping children. And before coming back to Scholastic, because it's my second time back, I was working in alternative education. And we had amazing partnerships with school districts to figure out how can we help young adults who have lost their path and bring them back into the educational process so they can become who they always planned to be in their walk of life. And I saw so many children, young adults, that reminded me of my journey with my friends and myself, when you sometimes don't see what the best next step is, finding their way back and succeeding when you think about college and career success. So now, full forward to here at Scholastic, what I love about this work is we're zoning in on how can we prevent that gap from happening by making sure that we have partnerships with supports to wrap around and have families and communities in partnership with schools so we can make sure that our children, again, can grow to become what they were born to be.
You definitely shared a lot of nuggets there, good brother. I think it's always important that we understand the journey that each individual takes, right? I think those journeys add to our perspective on why we do this work. So I heard your why. I clearly heard your why. I heard your why beginning when you were at Morgan State as an undergraduate student. I heard your why when you came into this ecosystem of education and saw your passion and desires, wanting to leave a mark. I heard your why about changing the trajectory of those students who may not always know what their path should look like, or maybe their path has been a little bumpy along the way. I heard your why when you talked about connecting community, family to school, connecting this space that we call language arts literacy, space we call the love of learning and reading. And I heard your why on eliminating those gaps, right? So you dropped a lot of little nuggets that speak to why you're an important individual and an influencer, right? You're an
Thank you for that.
influencer in this space of education. So let's talk about your influence, right? So you have had a variety of roles. You're an entrepreneur in the spirit, and you're an entrepreneur in the work. Yet you've been able to leave a lasting imprint in many districts that you've worked in. What have been some common themes, some common conversations that you've had with school leaders, district personnel, or communities around improving our language arts literacy, improving our reading influence in the communities of students today?
No, I appreciate that question. So some common themes that come up are that the challenges that we face are very similar. Even though there are unique circumstances to the community and the population of students that we have in the district, there are so many similarities in the challenge that we're dealing with. And what I realize is that so much pressure is put on school districts to solve such a large challenge that we have for our communities. And Superintendent Glover, I think you've heard me mention this because it was a data point that I can't get out of my head. As a former educator in classrooms, never crossed my mind to see the value of time and how much time children spend in the classroom versus all the rest of the time that they have to spend learning. And only 1,000 or 6,000 hours of their awake time are spent in the classroom. And so as long as we aren't thinking about how we can complement our goals in the classroom with other critical stakeholders, then it's going to be difficult to multiply the efforts that we're trying to get in helping our children grow. And then when our children have gaps, we need to multiply in order to get to those particular places that we want to grow to. And what you mentioned earlier, which is the places where we see great work happening, take partnership. We can't do this work alone. I'm not going to quote the saying, but it is an African proverb, and you probably know it better than I. that if you want to go fast, you go by yourself, and if you want to, I forgot the close of it, but it's you want to go fast, you go by yourself, and if you want to do the work right, you go as a group. That's me paraphrasing it.
Right, right.
And we have to remember that this is not something that we can do in isolation. It's not healthy to do in isolation, and it's difficult. In fact, I think nearly impossible to do in isolation for multiple reasons. There's only so much time, and there's only so much energy, and then you want different voices in different places to give leadership, give direction, and fill a void, and have their expertise come to the table to support your overall vision and your overall goal. And you often talk about making sure that you have that vision and you have those strategies to create the focus so we can execute. And that execution really takes a team. It takes a team rowing in the same direction.
In this climate, right, of education right now, fiscally there are challenges, and there were those who will say that schools are flush with money, right, and those districts that misuse money. So let's just put it into context. Yes, we can say there are spaces of education where money should not be a concern, but the reality it is the correct direction of how our resources are used. We can have conversations all day if they're adequately used. I'm going to speak from the spaces and so something you just said, that I want to make sure that we're maximizing our time and our resources. 1,000 of the 6,000 wake hours spent in the classroom, right? That seems like we're not maximizing time, right? What kind of money or fiscal allocations are we directing towards those resources that really have been proven to be value added, the research-based information? I know we struggle with that as a society. I know we struggle with that with institutions of education. I know we struggle with that. But yet I do look to partnerships, and I'm going to keep on saying this, folks, partnerships that allow us to say, hey, sometimes I got to redirect my time and my energy to this space because somebody out there is seeing this work on a regular basis in a much more global aspect than I may be seeing it. So my question to you, good brother, is when you have the privilege of working with superintendents, school districts, school leaders, what are some high leverage goals that you leave us thinking about to make us redirect our assets, our resources to have a greater impact?
That's a great question, and to be honest with you, when I hear you talk, I hear best practices and how you achieve that. One of the main ones, I'm going back to focus, putting the time and effort in research, bringing the right people to the table to create the strategies that meet the vision that you're aiming for, short, mid, and long term. Figuring out what that looks like, because if we don't have a vision that has research, wisdom, and collaboration behind it that we stand behind, then we're really ineffectively using our time. And so I'll share something connected to time because you mentioned time as well. One of the things that I discussed with my team in relation to time, because I just think it's a struggle for everyone, and even more so in the information age and how much information comes at us at one time. I mean, it's exponentially different than when we were coming up. That there's a law called Price's Law. And Price's Law. And Price's Law says that of the 2,000 awake hours, and you can use this with other data points to find out when is the true work being done, that you take the square root of that number, and that's how much time the actual work is being done to meet the vision and the strategy that you're aiming for. So if I hope I didn't say awake hours because I meant work hours. If our normal work hours in a year is 2,000 hours, that means that the square root of that is somewhere around 50. So 50 of the 2,000 hours is where the magic happens. And the question is, can we make sure we minimally get 50 hours dedicated to what the real work is? And can we figure out where the white noise is so we can see if we can even increase 50 hours of the 2,000 hours to get more of that focus work done. So it really goes back to what I see you doing when you're planning, when you're strategizing, and when you're speaking, is making sure that we're zoned in and rowing down the same direction. We have agreement, we have a shared passion and a shared desire to accomplish a similar goal over a period of time that we can check in and measure and see how we're doing in case we need to make pivots to make sure that we can achieve those goals. And superintendents who think like that, that's what we need, because you are the North Star that we're following in how we're executing on the vision that you provided.
Where are we failing at, good brother? When you travel in Baltimore, Detroit, Chicago, Florida, wherever you are in this, continental United States, where are we? Where are our missteps?
Well, one is politics. Politics get in the middle of a lot of the work. Politics between, if I may, superintendents and boards, and sometimes those conversations aren't about the children, they're about politics. That's one area that I see. Another area that I see is, so history. There's a quote from a guy called Yava that I recently read, and I love this quote. So I'm going to read it and then I'll continue. History isn't the study of the past. It's the study of change. It teaches us what remains the same, what changes, and how things change. So I'm getting ready for a summit, and I'm preparing some of the talk points that I want to share. And I go back to a Baltimore Sun article that I was privileged to be in when I was younger and teaching in middle school. And I went back, which I haven't done in a long time. And I went back and I looked at, remember the newspapers, the real newspapers, the ones you used to sit in the coffee shop or the library, the big long ones.
Right.
So because of the fact that I was, fortunate enough to be in that article, I've saved it. It's laminated, old school. And I actually went back and I read the article. Guess what the article was on? It was on the science of reading.
Wow.
In 1995.
Wow.
It was talking about the NIH study. It was talking about the balance, the wars of whole language versus learning science of reading, and it was going through everything that we're talking about today. And so I had to pause as we're all trying to figure out how do we move needles. And the reason I shared that quote is because that quote stuck with me, because when you think about history, the question is, will we take this innovation and extra knowledge on the science of reading? Because I'm not going to say that the body of study hasn't grown, but it's been there. But what are we going to do differently? Because the same needle we were trying to move in 1995 is the same needle we're talking about today. So I kind of went on that message, but I just wanted you to see where my head goes when I think about how do we in education truly measure and have measurable results that we're looking at, so we can pivot to make sure that we are innovating and growing the same way you would expect this of, for instance, a technology company like an Apple or Google. We have to get to that point. And I know there's a lot of challenges related to that, because my last one, and I'll stop talking, is, unfortunately, a lot of our superintendents don't get the time to finish the work before changes happen in the district. And I think that's a disservice, not only to leadership in time, but to our communities, because that turnover doesn't help stability and doesn't help creating the foundation and doesn't help people to see what we're trying to socialize as the message of what's happening positive that's helping us to move forward in school districts? I know I spoke for a long time, so.
Nah, but brother, it's so interesting. Like, I'm a believer in the creator puts the universe together for us at certain times and different synergies. You mentioned the time where research and innovation is supposed to take us to a new heights, and we're supposed to build and grow upon it. And you said in 1995, the conversation on the science of reading was happening, and here we are, 30 years later, and we're still having that conversation. In the tech space, you wouldn't be in existence, right? So, literally today, here in our district, we had a conversation, with Apple, about innovation, where they presented to several of my district leaders, right? And they used an example about how they have evolved since 2005, right? So in 20 years, the trajectory of Apple's change and evolution has been amazing, so much so that its influence in our classroom spaces is like, oh my gracious, right? Globally, their impact.
Right.
So in 20 years, the tech company Apple has evolved to a point where they're having a major influence in the way we teach and learn today. And here we are recycling a theory from 30 years ago. We still haven't figured it out. So in essence, we failed. To your point, there's been growth of knowledge, but there hasn't been change in practice. I sound like a Sunday preacher.
You're totally right.
It's like a Sunday preacher. It's like a Sunday preacher. And I know people don't want to hear that, right? So we're not going to church. But what you're saying, brother, is so accurate, right? That's the struggle that we have, and I have. I feel like we're in this wheel of we say we're changing, but we're just cycling back. We're just cycling back. We would be out of business if we were Apple.
That's nothing but the truth. Out of business. So
I don't know. Maybe we might want to be careful. Maybe we're talking about the erasing of public education as we currently know it. I challenge it from this perspective, and I want to jump into the work that you're doing at Scholastic and the power of home libraries. So I challenge us to think about it like this. We have to begin to reimagine what schooling looks like today. We have to begin to redesign around the same theories of teaching and learning. We have to redesign, because if not, 30 years from now, when you and I are both in our 80s, somebody's going to be talking about the science of reading, and we're going to look like that is not only a 30-year conversation, that's a 60-plus year conversation.
60-plus year conversation.
And how have we benefited students along the way? So our little small contribution, and I don't say little, but our part that we're trying to do right now here in Hillside, and thanks to Scholastic and a team of people, great thinkers, man, you have to definitely give your team a lot of kudos, because your team is doing great work. But what we're trying to do to try to change the mindset of how we embrace the love of literacy is to make sure that, and this isn't a new concept, but to make sure that our children have good content in their homes. Talk to us about the work, and especially you and your team are doing to improve the literacy in the homes of our children today.
No, I appreciate the question, and I appreciate the energy. Again, we're kindred spirits when it comes to how we think about this passion that we have. So what we're trying to do is, you've heard the phrase that I'm about to say. How can we, one, try to be partners in the goal of moving from moments to habits? How can we help develop habits rather than celebrating an event? Because if we're trying to change habits, I think we all know this. I think it was 21 days they say it takes to create a habit. I forgot the name of the book, but it's a very popular book. I'm bad with remembering the names of even critical books like that. But the bottom line is, it's interesting. If you actually think about who you were when you were a child, and then you really look at what makes you, we don't change that much. So the parts of you that you want to change, which is the innovation, takes a lot of work. And in order for that to happen, we have to have consistency. We have to have cadence. So how do we actually have literacy be something that has a cadence where it's in front of our faces, and we have a reminder of how important this is, so we can start seeing how critical it is and developing it into a habit. But then when you go beyond that, how can we help be a resource for families to be able to see the power that they have at home and in their community on this literacy journey? And you don't have to be a high school graduate to be the expert in this journey and partnering with the community and your children. You don't even have to be literate to do it. You just have to understand what your role is and what strategies you can use, because we say this word literacy and we talk about books at home, but what we're really trying to do is use books as an access point to expose children to different types, different parts of the world, different types of story, different experiences. And we're also trying to get them to be a part of a community so they can see how important literacy is to making you belong and feel like you're a part of something. Increase your vocabulary, feed yourself rather than being fed by the fish, and just our families having these resources to see that by you asking questions and turning the book into a conversational piece is human nature. This is what we want. We want to tell stories. We were born to do this, tell stories. So we want to make sure that the books that we're providing, when you say making sure that we're focusing on mirrors, windows, and sliding doors, we want our children to see themselves. We want our children to see other places. We want our children to see other people, because sometimes you don't have the means to travel the world and get these experiences that grow people who have those opportunities to have an advantage. But I have met people actually who own corporations that were in similar situations where they never left their hometown, that learned all of this access from being an avid reader. And look at what they became, and now they can travel the world, but they can equalize their opportunity through books. That's power. We all know historically, we weren't always able to fulfill this desire to read and be literate. And we really need to protect that as a precious, it's something precious that we need to protect. So your question was, how do we support? We support it by making sure that we're building home libraries. We're providing our families with insights into how they can use it, how it could validate what they're already doing, how it can give them new ideas. We're providing feedback loops so the district can see, is the family receiving, using, how are they feeling about it, and how it helps to make decisions and pivots so that the time is right in relation to how we're strategizing in this goal. But it also helps to provide feedback to the families. It helps to create these opportunities, to create these networks amongst families. So Superintendent Glover, when you take it to the next step, and what you and I are working on is the whole literacy mentorship piece, which is how do we take community resources that all want to help their community and they're already there doing great work, but say, for a second, let's all come together and focus on literacy. Let's develop relationships with children so our children can see other people love literacy. Our children can see men coming into the classroom wanting to read. Our children can see people with different types of careers coming into the classroom to read, and they may not even see these careers. When we talk about being college and career ready, it's hard to be career ready when you don't know what careers are out there.
Yeah.
But now we're giving them exposure young so they can see this in a nice, comfortable space and develop these relationships with people who come from all walks of life, different languages, different countries, and different careers and experiences. This is exposure. And this also really, as you know, this gives the community a voice. They want to help. And it actually becomes less of the community helping the children. This experience actually ends up helping the community, because now they see how powerful they are and they love having this voice and this partnership and value and legacy that they're a part of leaving for the children, if you will.
Audience, you can tell that the fire was ignited and lit real bright when Dwaine started talking about this topic, right? You could tell the energy. the brother came heavy and strong. Now he sounded like a Sunday morning preacher today. All right, so
I got it from you.
but I'm gonna take away a point that just resonated, and I had to write it down. Right, you just got me thinking. How well do we protect one of our most natural and valuable resources? Books. How do we protect them? Like we protect gold and silver and jewelry, right? You got to have the bling, and we ridicule people that read. You're an Eagles fan, so I'm sure AJ Brown and what he did recently, right? And so it's funny how he was ridiculed, right, for reading on the sideline. Now, again,
right.
Maybe it's attention getting or whatever the case. But what did he do? He made a book sell out in a matter of a week because he felt that was inspiration. I'm not gonna lie. I went and looked. I said, well, I want to know what he's reading too.
I know. Me too. Yep.
Right. So he told us, and for the world to see, this is my natural resource. It's not the gold chain, the bling in my ears. It is this book that centers me. So how do we protect our natural resource, one of our most precious assets and commodities? Let's wrote that down. Brother,
yeah.
Listen. We could be on here bouncing back and forth all day. So you mentioned about our mentorship partnership where we have the Power of Home libraries that we're bringing in. We have the Real, which is our mentoring program that we brought in collaboration, which is really about bringing people in from the community in to work with our students, read to our students. It's been great. Kids love it. It's powerful. Talk to me as we kind of close and wrap up. Talk to me about what you want your legacy to be in this work.
Oh boy, that's it's. I'm glad you asked that question because I'm always thinking about legacy. I'm thinking about what are you going to leave when it's your time to go, and I think about the only way to live infinitely is to make sure that you're helping the generations behind you to keep moving upstairs, going further. My legacy is I want to be remembered simply as somebody that was fighting to protect what I like to call the in spite ofs. So, Superintendent Glover, I have this saying, and I have to share with you afterwards. I have a podcast, and the podcast is called Journey of the In Spite Of. And the reason it's called Journey of the In Spite Of is because when I was at Morgan State University, one of our deans, his common statement to us was, but what about the in spite ofs? And how do we change trajectory so in spite ofs can become because ofs? So I want to see a place where you and I haven't had a chance to talk about our own personal backgrounds from way, way back. I realize that I'm fortunate to be in the position that I'm in. I worked hard, I put in the work, I produced, but I also had to overcome a lot of obstacles that were in front of me to get here. And I want to make sure that our children cannot have the same amount of obstacles so we can start seeing more of the success that look like us and look like everybody and get to live the dream of being who they were born to be. If anyone can say that I helped them to do that, that's what I want to be my legacy.
You see how smooth that brother inserted his podcast into the conversation. That was smooth. Now that was real smooth. And yet at the same time it was powerful, right? The journey of the in spite ofs. I often was having a really deep conversation with my son, 28 years old. Shout out to my son and daughter. Shout out to my wife and my queen. But shout out to my son for bringing my mindset around always thinking about, Dad, how do you want us to move this work forward when you folks have left this space, right? And that's hard for me to sometimes like think about, right? When you're in it, but I too want to make sure that, we also going to leave it better than how we inherited it. But I want to be very specific because I don't think we give our young people the ground rules. Right?
I agree.
I don't think we give them the blueprint. We say these catchphrases, but they didn't ask us, well, what does that look like?
Right.
Draw me the picture of how I get from point A to point B.
Right.
So, good brother. This could go on for a while because I think we have so much we can share that could be inspirational. I want to read something to you, and I want you to shout out the word or sentence that resonates with you after I finish reading this.
Okay.
And this is an excerpt from the book Sankofa Mantras. See if I can get that in there. I don't know if you have that. Right, sister wrote just short snippets of African proverbs and grounding ourselves in positive wisdom. So I'm gonna read this twice, and I want to just close with your thoughts around this. I will expand my mind by feeding it wise words. I will expand my mind by feeding it wise words.
Be careful of what you think. Be careful of what you say, because what you think and what you say in words becomes you. So what you just said about wise words is how we protect ourselves. And we have to protect ourselves by the way we think and process and by the way we perceive and the words that we allow to come out of our mouths, because we don't want negativity or doubt to become us. The word is powerful, and we have to make sure that we understand and honor that. That's what I see in what you just shared with me. That's amazing. And Sankofa Mantras, I'm going to have to pick up that.
Powerful piece. There's a lot of little excerpts. I open it up in the course of my days, and I just find one that's gonna give me that grounding I need for the day.
That's
good,
beautiful.
brother. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. I know you are always on the road doing the good work for our young people and for our districts. The partnership that you have allowed us to engage in here in Hillside has been nothing but amazing for our kids and for our staff. So I thank you. I look forward to seeing you soon. I think in about 2 weeks, we're going to be in the same space.
We will. And I want to appreciate you being such a powerful leader and a model. Never doubt that people see it. I see it, and I know so many people see it, and I was amazed at how many people from Hillside were on our webinar. That means they're watching you because you're doing the right work and great work, sir.
I didn't pay him folks to say that. This is just genuine love, and I appreciate that. I do this because I love my children, babies. I love my children. I love them. You know why?
That's it.
Because like you said, I hope that they can look back and say, well, my time under this individual allowed me to experience A, B, and C, allowed my mind to open up. So I thank you. And I think our greatest critic for us are the kids, because they're going to tell us the truth, right?
Yeah, they will. They're
totally going to tell us the truth. So I'm more scared of them, because they're the ones that are going to go back and say, you didn't do jack while you was in that chair.
That's right.
I'm scared of the babies, man. I'm scared of them, because they either going to walk down the streets of Baltimore and see me and you and be like, no, I remember what you did. Or they're going to walk down the streets of any neighborhood and be like, yeah, okay.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Hey, brother, continue to shine. Be safe out there. Stay warm. Stay safe. Thank you for giving some time to Hillside. Hillside Public Schools, thank you very much for allowing me to share this time with you. I know we went a little longer than expected. We can chop it up. You can listen to it in segments. But whatever you do, take away the following points. The power of language arts literacy, the power of literacy, the power of the spoken word, the power of a book, right? Let this be your greatest commodity. Be like those who walk around with a book in their pocket. So you can have your cell phone on one side and your book on the other. And when you get kind of stuck, open it up and find that word, that passage that's going to ground you to be a successful thinker, creative thinker, critical thinker, innovator. Be a producer, not a consumer. In this day and age, we need to see more entrepreneurial spirit. I get hyped. I love this. Hillside, stand up. Superintendent Glover signing off for another episode of SuperTalk. Oh, and by the way, if you don't know, now you know. Give a shout out and listen to the podcast by Brother Dwaine. It's called The Journey of In Spite Ofs.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Let's get it. Let's go, Hillside. Till the next episode.
Thank you, sir.